Well, hello there, LinkedIn Live community. Hello, I'm Dr. Patty Fletcher here with my good friend, Dr. Meisha-ann Martin, and we are here today from our offices. Oop, putting the mic close to my mouth. Our offices here in Framingham, Massachusetts. It was the first time we got to see each other in person.
Yes, you were my first Workhuman human, Patty.
Oh my God.
The first person I met in person from Workhuman.
It's awesome. It was so great. We were doing a little dance.
I know.
Right?
I took off my mask and literally attacked you with a hug, y'all, with a
We
hug.
did. And that's before she even knew she could. So one thing that Meisha-ann and I found out today is we're going to be wearing bracelets. I'm a bracelet girl anyway, so we're clear. But we each have green bracelets on. And in it says handshakes and hugs. I have yet to have my hand shook. It's been all hugs, right? But we also have yellow bands, which is caution. So some of you might remember Nubs from last week who joined me, or 2 weeks ago. He had this one on, so we bumped elbows. So it's letting me know and meeting Nubs where he is. He wants an elbow. And then we have red, which is, you know what? Really happy to see you, but I'm going to maintain social distancing. And that's pretty much what we're talking about today, which is providing safety, in particular, psychological safety. So, welcome to this episode of Recognize This. Of course, this is our bi-weekly show that Workhuman does here on LinkedIn Live. Thrilled to have you with us. If you're joining us today, tell us who you are, where you're joining us from. If you have questions as we move along for Meisha-ann, for myself, put them in the chat and we will get to every question that we can. And if we can't get it to it live, we will respond with answers after the show. So, like I said, today we are talking about psychological safety. That means that I feel safe to be able to bring my version of myself to work, right? Be my authentic self, be myself, so much so that I feel like we belong. This is taking diversity, equity, inclusion to a whole new level. And I'm really excited to dive into this topic with Meisha-ann because it also enables us in the business of people to understand the new questions we need to start asking ourselves to provide, right? That place, that truly human workplace that meets people where they are so we can help them get to where they need to be as an individual as well as with the people around them. Thank you so much for joining me again. We had so much fun a few months ago.
Thank you for inviting me back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what do you think about the offices here?
I absolutely love it. I think it's a great space. It's very human. Not everybody's here, but I was able to walk around and see pictures and get an idea of really who I'm working with. So I've really been enjoying my office visit.
Oh, fantastic. And I hear our good friend, Matt Ferreira, who helped set up our camera setup here. He works on our behind the camera on our team, our marketing team here, that I think it's every first Wednesday of the month. We have Waffle Wednesday. He makes, my gosh, he even makes, what are they called? The things I can't eat, when you can't eat wheat. Can't think of it now.
Gluten-free.
Thank you. Gluten-free. See, I blocked it out. It's so damaging to me. So I'm excited. And what's really funny, Meisha-ann, is when people talk about it, they will tell you the story based on how people take their waffles. So it's a thing here. I will have a half with butter and syrup.
I see.
The other half will be with some preserves and butter.
See.
Do you have a waffle preference?
I like sweet and salty myself. So I like some macerated fruit and bacon.
Oh my. Hello. Oh my God. Wrap anything in bacon and I will have it. Oh my God. A Brussels sprout. Bring it on. It's perfect.
I do love bacon.
Absolutely perfect. So, okay, enough fun. All right. This is actually a fun topic and I am excited. And Michael Lucas, thank you for joining us and asking folks to share where they are dialed in from or tuned in from. And again, please let us know that you're here. We love interacting with you. So let's go ahead and talk about, look, we all know we're living in extraordinary times, right? We get that. I think we all understand that there are things that will probably return to the workplace, some good things, maybe some not so good things. But I think that we also learned some new things. Chris French, who is a frequent visitor here at at Workhuman's LinkedIn Live. He's the one who works with all of our customers. He works across the customer organization. And one thing he said was so interesting when he was here the last time, and that was, the biggest difference across organizations is that we as leaders can only see now our employees as human beings.
Yes.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Right. And so with that, and by the way, we've always been human, just saying it. And we at Workhuman know that, right? Which is why we're all about the human workplace. But that does really force a different viewpoint of, therefore, as an HR leader, therefore, as a business leader, anybody dealing with other humans, what is the responsibility, right? Because we as humans need to feel psychological safety, psychological health, just as much as we need to feel it physically and financially and spiritually. And you can't make people feel safe, but you can set up the environment to catalyze it, right? Awesome. So I just want to share a bit. This research, Google's people operations team, and Meisha-ann, I think you're probably the one who introduced this to me. I have a very short memory, can't tell you what I had for breakfast this morning, but it was a survey of about 250 attributes over 180 teams, and found that the number one driver of success, psychological safety. That's crazy. And so as a result, Meisha-ann and her team got together with a few folks here in Workhuman and decided, you know what? Let's dig a little bit deeper on this. And we wanted to know, it looks like if psychological safety was spread evenly across different demographics, right? People with different needs, different wants, different expectations, different desires, how this affects everything from their mental health to their productivity and to their performance. And all of that relates, of course, to the experience of working, right? What is in front of us. So Meisha-ann and her team surveyed about 3,000 U.S. workers on this topic. And the results of that's what we're going to talk about today.
I am so excited.
Oh my God.
Did I take the words out of your mouth? Sorry.
It's so funny. So Meisha-ann, what's happening is there are so few of us, in the office, right? We're starting to open up a bit. But come on, it's summertime, vacations and all of that. So there are quite a few people here, but you end up running into people, of course, as you walk in the hallways. And Meisha-ann, you have been giddy about talking about this. We had one of our colleagues here who actually did the report who's giddy. We geek out over this stuff.
We do.
Yeah, we geek out. Yeah. So thank you for joining. And also, if you're joining from YouTube, also say hello. It looks like Lisa Segura. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Joined us from Austin. Exactly. Woohoo. We were just talking about Austin, actually, Lisa. One of my favorite places. We had Workhuman Live there in 2018. So much fun. Absolutely loved it. Thank you for joining us. So let's just dive into it, shall we? All right, fantastic. So let's maybe kick it off with the why, right? So we know that Google did that report. We know we wanted to learn more, but really what sparked the idea of doing this research, and why are we talking about it right now? Why is it such an imperative for business?
Yeah. So, I'll be honest. Part of it is personal for me. As I was speaking to other Black women during the pandemic, I started to hear something that was different from what I was hearing from other people. And it was this kind of sigh of relief from taking off the metaphorical mask. Like I'm at home, I don't have to aspire to this professionalism as much. I can be myself at home. The kids can be running around and nobody's going to judge me, right? And then I reflected on how I felt interviewing last year with my natural hair for the first time and remembering just how terrified I felt and how vulnerable that was. And when I reflected on it in this position, all of those feelings relate to psychological safety, and also here at Workhuman, the Workhuman IQ team, we have a research agenda every year, and we sit back and we think about what's going to be important moving forward. And we try to get ahead of that doing research. So we always know that it is important for individuals to be able to be authentic and human at work. It's good for the human and it's good for business, but it's especially relevant right now as we're reimagining the future of work and what that looks like, we wanted to make sure that those ideas, the ability for people to be themselves and to contribute was at the forefront as we're reimagining how we work and how we move forward.
I want to mention something here. You said something so many interesting things, and I absolutely understand why that matters, right? Your experience here. So a few things that you said, I just want to reflect on. There are 150 different unconscious biases that play at our brains at any given time at work, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've mentioned this before. Right now, each one of us, our brains are consciously processing 50 bits of information at a time. Unconsciously, we are processing about 50 to 70 million bits of information. The discriminatory behavior starts at about the age of 3, where we are learning about the world around us from the other discriminatory behavior that turns into stereotypes. Stereotypes get confirmed, get turned into unconscious bias, which gets confirmed and turned into discriminatory behavior. By the way, it's called the human condition, and we all have it. So what you just talked about was really interesting, which is, so here I am at home. I, for the first time, have my natural hair, right? Not presenting myself through the eyes of someone who says, do this to be worthy.
Yes.
But you also said I could just show up. I could just be. When you are part of an underrepresented population, particularly women, and even more so for women of color, what we know from experience and what we know from research is we are conditioned to believe that we constantly have to prove our intellect to be in the room. And the people around us are conditioned to believe that as well.
Yes.
You can't be psychologically safe if you feel like you constantly have to prove a version of yourself that other people want to see versus just being and doing your work. Thank you for bringing that up. And look, this is not a blame and shame game. This is simply facts, right? What we see, and our job becomes, and then what? Which means we learn some more. So let's dive into some of the data then, right? You shared your personal experience. Look, you can be from any demographic combination and you have absolutely faced adversity. There's no way, right? No way. And you would also probably not feel necessarily safe. And we don't mean, someone's waiting for you in a dark corner kind of, right? But real psychological safety. And we're not even talking abuse here. We're talking just, again, feeling safe enough, right? Psychologically to be yourself and to show up for who you are, because you are, by the way, perfectly imperfect. So let's start unpacking. Let's talk about the stress levels. 61% reported elevated stress levels. I think we all can relate to that. So much so, I have to admit, I was kind of surprised, as you know. I was kind of surprised it wasn't actually higher. So I'd love to know, are there variants of this? Are we seeing it more in some places?
Yes. So I like to say, just tongue in cheek here, that the mean hides a multitude of sins. So the 61% is across the entire 3,000 person sample, right? So, but as we started looking at different demographics, we found that women were significantly more stressed than men, particularly if they were parents. Parents on the whole were more stressed. And interestingly to me, I didn't expect this difference to be so stark, but it was. The least stressed persona in our workplace is actually a male without children. They are significantly below everyone else in terms of stress levels. So that kind of brings the average down.
Why were you surprised by that?
I wasn't surprised that they were less stressed. I was surprised at how much less.
Okay. That's interesting.
The magnitude.
Yeah, the magnitude. So let's unpack that a bit more. What are you reading from that then? If there is this stress, what do we do with that kind of information?
Yeah, I think the next logical step is for us to start asking why we're seeing some of these things that we're seeing. So why are people who are parents more stressed in the workplace? And why do they have less psychological safety? Same for women and minorities, by the way. They also report less psychological safety. So we have to start asking ourselves, what are the things about the way we have constructed work that makes parents more stressed and less psychologically safe? As we're redesigning and rethinking, what are some of the artifacts we can put in place to make things easier? So that's part of the reason why I like these bands, right? Because you don't have to come in cold and say, hey, I actually really need to 6 feet. I need 6 feet. So it's an artifact that is kind of a, like an entry level to psychological safety. So I think as we start asking why, we can design a more inclusive workplace for the future that increases psychological safety for everybody.
Yeah. In order to do that, we have to catalyze new thought and new questions. And so let's talk a little bit about that. So you mentioned some of those artifacts. In order to catalyze new kinds of questions to address these kinds of issues that we're seeing, right? The magnitude of variance, meeting people where they are. It doesn't mean that we want single white guys without kids to feel more stressed. That's right. That's not what we're talking about. Right. What we are. So we're not trading off one population for another. And we're also not asking women with children to fix themselves because they are fine. Thank you very much. But it does come back to what do we take from this? What is our responsibility? What are the new lenses we need to put onto workplace practices? I know an awful lot of us are very focused in on getting people into an office, or do we have a dynamic work experience? By the way, that's important, but those are mechanics, right? There's so much more to it.
Oh my gosh, yes. Right? I agree with that so much.
So let's talk about the human workplace. One of the traits of a human workplace, meeting people where they are, is safety at work, psychological safety. It's not a topic we all talk about. It's usually the OSHA stuff and body kind of safety. How do we cultivate a workplace that has psychological safety? What are the new questions?
Yeah, I think the new questions are, okay, so if you're giving people choice, whether or not to stay at home or come into the office, choice is always a good thing. Yeah. But I'm a fan of measurement and analytics. Keep track of who's choosing to come in and who's not. Yeah. Get underneath that if you see that there are differences. Why are certain people choosing not to come in? And I think what we need to ask ourselves is, what are the things we need to do to make the office a destination that's equally as psychologically safe for all people, so that we don't have to mandate how often people have to come in, because it's just a community that everybody wants to be a part of.
I love the office as a destination. When we think about the office as a destination, we think about psychological safety. And then we think about business is hard, right? And if you are in a for-profit business like we are, then you are focused in on achieving your financial goals. You're focused in on your customer delight. You're focused in on product service, getting to market in the right way. We have some pretty hard stuff we do. Right. If you're a nonprofit, you are focused in on that mission, right? If you are a government org, you're focused in on your constituencies. So there's so much there. And yet, when I think about psychological safety, I think about bringing my whole self to work. I remember that brick buildings don't do business with brick buildings. Right. People do business with people. The word vulnerability comes to mind.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So there are things that, leaders can do to enable or create that environment, as you said, that, create psychological safety or support psychological safety. And vulnerability is a big part of that. So our research indicates that when leaders check in with their direct reports at least once a week or more often, people report higher levels of psychological safety. But you also have to be thoughtful about how you check in, right? Not just checking in on tasks and deliverables, but how the person is doing. And you don't want to go in cold. You don't want to kind of force somebody to share personally if you haven't built the foundation and created the environment. So as the leader, go first. You be vulnerable first.
Those optics.
Yeah. If you're stressed, say it. If you've made a mistake, say it. If you're unsure, say it. And that will create an environment where people feel more comfortable speaking up and doing the same. Also, recognition. Our data supports that. as well, that when you appreciate somebody else and you take the time to say thank you in detail, it seems to reinforce an individual's value to the organization. And our findings show that that not only decreases stress, but it also increases psychological safety. So take the time, because when people feel more psychologically safe, it's not only good for the human, but you've got people speaking up. That's innovation. You've got people bringing their whole selves. That's better performance and better productivity, as the Google study found. It's not who's on the team, it's how the team operates.
It's awesome. And the thing about the way that recognition is done here at Workhuman is we do tie the recognition directly to the value-based behaviors of an organization, right? And we've said this before. It's so interesting because with a recognition program like that, those aren't simply those behaviors, those values are not simply words on a PowerPoint or in the About Us section of a website. They are truly informing, as you said, the how we work, right?
Yes.
They're not in addition, but the how we work. But that's also not enough. It's that frequency is what
Yes.
I'm hearing, the
Yes.
frequency, and that you don't go for the jugular right away,
Right.
So you have to build a relationship, which is critical. It's awful. I'm an in-your-face kind of person, as you know, so
No.
as you are, right? Going in for the hug. But that works for us. But our interaction is so unique. My interaction with someone from my team is going to be different
Yeah.
and the same. So we've got to meet people where they are, which does require vulnerability.
Yes.
It does connect us.
Yes.
That is absolutely critical. Is there a rule of thumb on the frequency?
Yes. So our data shows a big split between weekly and less often, both for check-ins and for recognition. So effectiveness of both of those techniques start to decline as you move from weekly to monthly. So weekly really is, the standard.
Yeah.
Should be the standard.
Should be the standard.
But actually, most people in our sample were not getting recognition weekly or checking in weekly. So we've got some work to do.
And so what is it? Is it regularly scheduled? Should they be ad hoc? I mean, humans are more ad hoc, but we're so busy. So I know it's such a practical, tactical question, but it's a priority or it's not.
Yes. And we apply discipline to the things that are important.
That's right.
And this is important. Therefore, we should apply discipline. Put it on the calendar, and shake it up if you need to. Sometimes have it in a room, or maybe sometimes go on a walk, whatever works. But I think just the act of scheduling it and getting it on the calendar also communicates to your direct reports that you think it's important.
Yeah, it really does. And it also, again, optics, right? It's okay, I'll go first. Then they start doing it with the people around them.
Yes.
Right. And when you are a leader of leaders, it's particularly important. And what I love about my personal experience with check-ins is I end up getting more from my check-ins with my team than I do, of course I get a lot from my boss, right? But you learn so much, not only about what's going on. The work is important, ensuring everyone's in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. We get that. We all know it's important. But what people also start to understand is the value they are providing for the organization, to your point, right? That connection between the work I do and how it impacts the business.
Yes.
The other thing I really love and that I'm taking away from what you are talking about is it's like priceless, that human connection.
It really is.
That actually being seen, you do feel part of something and you do feel safe. And that is so important. I never really put those two things together before.
It is. And I just want to say that, throughout my career, this is something that I've been practicing because I met Workhuman, then Global Force, when I was with another company several years ago. And I remember just thinking about, okay, so gratitude does this thing. And so then I started to practice it with my direct reports. And then what happened? It bled over into my personal life. And I started to take the time to reinforce to people I love what I appreciate about them. And I'm telling you, it is transformative, not only at work, but also in life.
It's as leaders, though, particularly younger leaders, you open the kimono, but don't open it too far, right? And
isn't that what we learn?
Yeah, it's what we learn. What's your response to that?
I think this is the time to blow everything up in terms of everything we've learned about how we should be. that wall between the professional and the personal.
As if we're two different people.
Right. Like, why did we ever do that?
Right.
Like, open up that kimono all the way
That's right.
is what I say.
Yeah.
Maybe, not bring your whole self to work if your whole self is not, your best self, right? Bring your best self, the best parts of yourself.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's hard, right? Because then that's judgment, which is difficult, right? Because what I think is my best self, you may run away from. So it's hard.
Yes.
It is hard, but your point is right on. And one of the things, I might have mentioned this before in previous convos, I've learned so much from millennials and much younger Gen Xers that are almost there. And I remember I had hired this really incredible young man right out of Stanford, super smart, very humanitarian focused in tech. And so we were talking, and he wanted to be a leader, and he wanted to climb the ropes very quickly. And so we were talking about stuff, and I was sharing my, at the time, unconscious biased opinion of open your kimono, don't open it too far, blah, blah, blah. I was explaining, honestly, enabling some bad behavior with one of my peers that he had witnessed. Well, that's who he is. He's a really nice guy and started doing all these things that he does for charity, right? And this guy who didn't realize he was supposed to treat me in a certain way because I'm his boss, which was even better lesson for me.
Yes.
Really good to learn that early on in my career was, gosh, what an interesting way of being, Patty. I would never be friends with someone I wouldn't be willing to do business with. And I'd never do business with someone I wouldn't be willing to be friends with. When I look in the mirror, I see one person. Why should I change?
Oh my gosh. I feel like that generation I know.
Right?
They ask all the questions. And that's something I think all of us should be doing all the time.
Absolutely.
Asking the questions and challenging our assumptions of how we are and how we should be.
So I know you had some, kind of aha moments. Was there something that awoke something in you? Speaking of that, a new lens, a challenge question you had for yourself after you read this?
Yeah. So after doing all of that research and having these conversations and reading some of the stuff in the popular press, one of the things I've been thinking about lately is, our old idea of what is professional, right? Because we've been taught that there is this uniform that we wear to work. Remember when tattoos weren't okay?
Oh, yeah.
So that's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Like, why is it not okay to express yourself with blue hair or whatever? Like, why did we decide that wasn't professional?
Yes.
So, yeah, that's what
we didn't, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We did not.
Which goes back to who feels psychologically safe and who does not.
Yes.
If you invented the constructs, which are well over 100 years old, they were meant for one population, not blame and shame, simply reality.
Right.
So our job is to figure out what that means. My tattoos have nothing to do with my ability. And I will tell you, Meisha-ann, I do have 3 of them. And I think about where they should be on me so that no one else sees them. Right? It's crazy.
Yes.
I just had an awake moment. Thank you so much. Yes. That's what I'm taking away from this. So I see Erica. Oh my goodness. Erica, I'm just seeing Erica Santos said, I love wearing my curly hair while working remote, not worrying about looking unprofessional. Erica Santos, I have been on Zoom calls with you. You always look amazing.
She does.
Your contribution to the work that we do is just unbelievable and amazing. And so I'm happy you shared that. I just want you to know what the rest of us see, which is you, all amazing you, and how you enable us to work more human. So Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us. Meisha-ann, I love talking with you. With and without a camera and microphone. I love it. And so, folks, I know summer is a bit quiet, but I'd love for you to put in your calendars August 4th. I will be back to speak with Chris French, who I mentioned earlier. You might remember him as our head of customer strategy here. And we're going to talk about what we have all been thinking about in the world of HR, the mass exodus, and what life looks like as we begin to build those amazing human dynamic workplaces. Thank you, Meisha-ann.
Thank you so much for having me again. And thank you for creating this space.
Oh my gosh. I feel psychologically safe. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.